Hello, and welcome to the Fear Channel, a channel with regular broadcasts telling the most chilling of urban legends, ghost stories, and forays into the darkest corners of the human mind. Those faint of heart or prone to night terrors should proceed at their own risk. Tonight's story is Letchwood Village Asylum.
Letchwood Village was a farm colony institution for the physically and mentally disabled, with a focus on the epileptic and the feeble-minded. Its doors opened in 1911, and it closed for good in 1996. During its 95 years of operation, the location became infamous for its experimentation on patients, neglect of residents, and abuse amongst the staff. The area is now abandoned, and many of the over 150 buildings in the village are dilapidated, in disrepair, with vines and other plant growth covering them over. In its early years, Letchwood Village was praised as a success. Working the earth on the plantations was a great form of exercise for those who were physically capable of performing the work. The village was even capable of producing enough food to meet its needs up until around 1960. On a humanitarian level, Letchwood was originally a major improvement over the almshouses of the 19th century, where the insane were typically tortured, or worse, in an attempt to remove what caregivers assumed were demons. The better conditions would not last long, however. By 1921, just 10 years after its opening, the village was already degrading into a rather grim place to live. The first major problem was overpopulation. The state was slow to build more dormitories when the population ballooned to over 1,200 patients. By the 1950s, the village was overflowing with over 4,000 patients. Families that knew of the village would take their deranged relatives and dump them at the facility, leaving the already overwhelmed staff to take on more than they could handle. This continued over the decades. Patients were often left neglected, and this wasn't known to the public until the infamous Irving Haverman photographs in the 1940s. The photographs exposed how patients were often left dirty, naked, and unattended in sterile white rooms. Those who could not feed themselves had to be fed by the staff. Often there were 2 or 3 nurses feeding 80 or more patients, and there are instances of patients choking to death at the hands of staff trying to rush at meals. Early live polio vaccines were also tested on children at the facility. When the first boy tested didn't die, the vaccine was administered to 19 others, 5 of whom later died from the polio in the vaccines. Patients who died at Letchwood had their brains removed and kept on display in a lab. Their bodies were then carted off to unspecified graves. There were also cases of the staff turning against themselves, with instances of sexual assaults and multiple accusations of rape having been reported. ABC News' Geraldo Rivera even did a special on asylums across the country in 1972. While the documentary covered many asylums, part of the program focused on how conditions remained horrible at Letchwood. The report focused national attention on the state of American asylums, and overall improved funding and efforts across the country. However, this shift did nothing to improve the state of affairs at Letchwood, which remained poorly funded and poorly managed. There is a site half a mile from the asylum, at the end of Call Hollow Road, where one can find hundreds of nameless graves of those who died at Letchwood over the decades. A large stone memorial is engraved with the words, "Those who shall not be forgotten." Listed below it are the names of those who died. Behind the stones are hundreds of wooden crosses marking the unnamed graves. These graves are rarely visited. Letchwood Village closed for good in 1996. Many of those who worked there refused to speak on their experiences. The buildings located there have since mossed over. In the time since its closure, rumors have circulated about the old abandoned buildings being haunted. Many have gone to Letchwood in search of ghosts and other paranormal phenomena. Some people who visited the ruins of the village reported feeling ill at ease for several days afterwards. Photographs taken there often come out with strange anomalies and orbs. The medical building is considered to be the most haunted place at the facility, with people reporting the sound of footsteps wandering the building without any known cause. Today, most areas of Letchwood are off limits. Some sections have been renovated in the hopes of reusing the buildings for homes and storefronts. It is, however, illegal to trespass on the old abandoned buildings, but it is easy to go unnoticed since other people pass through the area frequently. Those who have been caught trespassing say the cops are just as afraid of the area and prefer to stay away from the place unless forced to chase after trespassers.